Record. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Mauricio, and I will be your lecturer for today's lecture. Okay, so some administrivia. Homework 4 is due tonight. It is a grade scope quiz. Homework 5 should be released and is due a week from now. The homework is supposed to be a step up in difficulty, so get started early and please ask questions on Ed if you have any type of question. Um, so some recap. So far we've learned some HTML, some CSS, some JavaScript, and how these things work together to create a simple website on your web browser. Some of the things that we've seen is that HTML is static and it's locally rendered on your browser. So far, JavaScript can only be run in those script tags, which can only be used within HTML pages. And so far, there's no backend, only content we see and code that runs alongside it. Now, what is backend? I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with some of these terms, so I might as well just introduce them. What is backend and what is front end? Essentially, these are two concepts that are very important for web development, and they delimit essentially the code that runs on your computer and the code that runs on servers. For example, let's say that you want to log in into Instagram in your computer. There's going to be some code that whenever you request the web page of Instagram, that is going to be delivered into your computer and it's going to be run in your browser. There's also going to be some code that it's going to have to be run on their servers. For example, whether you give them your credentials to log in and then you get all your information associated to your profile, that is that has to be protected and you know to whom these servers give this information has to be organized and protected because you don't want other people to be able to access, your private information, your private data, a lot of these stuff. These things are managed by a server, and this is what it's known as a backend. And the front end is essentially the code that you receive in your computer and allows you to use Instagram. So again, going again into front end, usually your browsers, if it's Safari, Google, Mozilla Firefox, your browser compiles and executes the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that you receive, and that's why you have an interactive page. However, the browser only runs JavaScript for the client side of applications. We right now need a tool to run JavaScript code outside of the browser so we can set servers. Again, the backend is what handles the work in the background, such as saving your data from your profile, checking things, and making sure everything runs correctly in an application. Um, so that's why we're going to introduce this tool called Node.js. Node.js is basically a JavaScript runtime engine. It is basically an environment where you can run JavaScript code. This lets you, Node.js lets you compile and execute JavaScript without needing the script tags and allowing you to write JavaScript independently of the HTML pages. Um, Maybe if you're a little bit more familiar with other, programming languages, you'll know that, Python also has a runtime for Python, Java has a GVM, and so on. So why should we use Node.js? Well, Node.js allows us to write backend code using JavaScript, and this includes writing APIs, accepting requests, performing website logic like connecting to a database, or basically any code that you want to continue to run even when web pages are not open, you need, this constant availability to serve, any purpose, whether it's like, someone wants to request your page or something of that sort. Now, we have also another tool that we're gonna need called Node Package Manager. Um, Usually whenever you're developing a web app or anything like that, um, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. There's a lot of free available libraries of code with implementations that were already done by someone, and all you do is like import pieces and then like stick them together. So you might wonder like, well, how do I access these libraries? How do I, import them into my code and use them? That's can be, some complicated process. So there's some tools available that make this process a little bit more easy. In this case, we have Node Package Manager, um, what that is betterly known as NPM. So Node.js also provides a way for you to use other people's code in the form of packages. And well, what I said, it helps you to not reinvent the wheel just to add a feature to your website, such as authentication, some libraries like React, which we'll see in the future, or simple databases. Using npm, you can install packages by name, simply import them into your JavaScript file to use those functions in your code. We'll see a demo in a few minutes. So in order to install Node.js, you're gonna have to go into the page Node.js, and then you click here, get Node. And usually you're gonna have to click on this one, Windows Installer, but it really depends. Well, it depends on what type of machine you have. If it's a Mac OS, you'll probably have to get the Mac OS one. If you have Windows, you'll probably have to get Windows. And you're gonna have to choose the architecture of your computer. Um, in case like you want to make sure that you install the correct Node.js installer, you can go, into your browser and look how to check computer architecture. In here, for example, in my Windows, it says check the system type in your settings. I can do system type. Let me try system type. So system information, system type, x64 base PC. So I would have to download the one that says x64. Um, so yeah, is it full screen? Yeah. Wait, I'm not sure it's full screen. Okay, now it's full screen. Um, yeah, after following the directions to install, okay, I didn't do that. You're gonna have to open your terminal. In Windows, it's called PowerShell. I think let me check real quick. What is the terminal? What is the terminal called in Mac? So in Mac OS, it's just gonna be called terminal. Um, in Mac OS and sorry, in Windows, it's gonna be called PowerShell. You go to your PowerShell and it tells us to type node-v in the terminal to test the installation. So we're gonna do node-v. And here, if we get like a number of version of our node, this means that we installed it correctly. Um, Sometimes, installing this type of things, if you're not very experienced, can be kind of intimidating. But there's a lot of tutorials in order to like sort of simply install these tools. You can go into YouTube and be like, tutorial install Node.js. there's various like tutorials that take you step by step how to install these things. Um Anyways, so we installed Node.js, and along with your installation of Node.js, npm should be installed. Um, so we go again, in this case PowerShell, and Mac it will be terminal, and you do npm-v. We see here it's installed as well. Um, Anyways, let's move on. So now, another tool that we're gonna have to learn how to use is something called Express.js. And the reason why we're gonna learn how to use Express.js is because it makes making websites a little bit simpler. Like if you have a server and you want your server to serve, contents, whether it's an HTML page, whenever someone calls for a certain route, you want to be able to serve those contents, and Express.js makes that process a lot easier. Um, so what is Express.js? It is a package like we spoke about. Someone already coded this library and you can simply import it with npm, and it's used to write API endpoints for web servers. So with this package, our server is going to be able to take in requests sent via a URL endpoint and perform some code logic and optionally send a response with data back. So the way we installed npm is doing npm install express in our folder, but a lot of these details we're gonna show them in the example, and then you can circle back in order to see, the specifics of it. Right now, I'm just introducing to you some concepts so you understand. Um, so Express.js, we have the express function. It creates an express application. We attach all the API methods to this application, and it's a top level function exported by the Express module. A lot of these things will make sense once we get into the demo. We also have the function app listen. It basically binds and listens for connections on the specified host and port. In this case, your host is going to be your local host in your computer, and you can choose a port of your like. Um, Apart from the port, it also takes a callback function on what to do right after it binds. Usually, in our example, we just want to be notified whether the binding worked correctly or not. Um, and yeah, ports are how your computer listens to requests for the server to receive a request. It needs to bind and use port number. So usually in your computer, you have a known public port, and this is how whenever you call, I don't know, the Facebook servers, the Facebook servers know into what port to serve you the content. Um, so a callback function, what is a callback function? I mentioned this. A callback function is simply a function passed as an argument, and it will be run, in this case, whenever they specify it. But yeah, a callback function is just a function passed as an argument, and then inside the function, you can use that function passed as an argument. This is a small example of Express.js code, Express.js app. We have Express app port 3000, and we bind to the port, and we serve, no, and we run this callback function once the port is successfully binded into the application. Now, Express.js requests. So each Express API function will take in a request and a response object, because that's basically how communication works on the web. So every device, if it's on the web, it will take a request and it will send a response. Now, the request object will contain usually some input data and other metadata about the request, and other relevant members such as request body to get basically data into basically like send your data. Let's say whenever you want to log in into your TikTok account in that body, of course encrypted, your credentials are going to be sent because otherwise how will TikTok know that you're actually who you're trying to, you know, how will would TikTok know that, you're actually the person requesting the profile to, to see your TikTok, your feed or whatever. Um, Now responses, we use a response object to send data back and handle error codes. Send data back. So yeah, essentially like how whenever you log in successfully into your TikTok, this is the way TikTok would send you like the information to your feed, maybe cache videos for your For You page and so on. Now we can simply set up API endpoints by calling app and method, and we're gonna set the endpoint and the callback function, which is the function that we're gonna run once this endpoint is called. Now the function takes in the API endpoint as a string prefix with a slash, and the function also takes in a callback function with request and response as the inputs to perform the logic on the endpoint request. Now this is a small example of a Node.js app. You can circle back to them and like see the code. Um, Connecting server to the front end. We can use fetch. So this is like the meaty part. What we want to do is be able to set up some sort of like server with Node.js, and again with our HTML, be able to call our server. And we're gonna be able to do that using fetch from last lecture. Now we know what the endpoint of our server is. It's going to be localhost, and it's going to have a port, and then it's going to have an endpoint that we're going to set with Express.js. So we can simply type that into the fetch call. Now we can call our backend Express.js servers from our HTML frontend pages, and yeah, that's it. So I'm not sure that we have actually attendance, but yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's demo time. So this is gonna be the demo for it's gonna have both a demo for Node and a demo for Express. So whenever you get into your IDE to build some code, what you're gonna do is we're gonna have a demo.mjs file. Usually it's a demo JavaScript file, but since we're gonna use npm, we're gonna use the m to make the file a module. And this is something that you'll have to worry about later, not right now, but right as of right now, we need to treat the JavaScript file as a module um, for simplicity issues. Um, so here right now we're gonna try to import a library called Chalk. And remember, before we we are able to actually import something, what we're gonna have to do is through our terminal, Cubstart demo, we're gonna have to move to node/down demo. And then right here, we're gonna run npm install chalk. And what npm is gonna do is it's gonna install chalk into our subdirectory. So right now, if you go here, we used to have demo.mjs, but now we also have node modules, which has the code for the chalk module that we imported, and something called package.json that basically states it's like a list of the dependencies that we've installed so far and what version we're using. In this case is we're using Chalk version 5.6.2. And then if we want to run our code with Node, what we need to do is write node um space demo dot jms. Oh, mjs. And we see here we print hello world. Now this chalk library allows us to print into the console with different colors. So if we try to do red and we rerun node space demo.mjs, we're gonna get in color red. We can also do blue. We can do yellow. I wonder if we can do black. We can do black. I wonder what other colors. Black bright? Is this one? Yeah. So with this package, we're able to print into our console with different colors. Um and yeah, that's how you run a Node. That's how you download a package. That's how you download a package into your application with npm, and this is how you run your program with Node. Now, of course, what we're trying to actually do is, set up a server. So, in order to do that, we're gonna use we're gonna go into our Express demo, which is gonna be our library that we're gonna use in order to set up our server. So first, we're gonna need a file called server.mjs. We're gonna switch into the directory of express slash demo underscore. So we do change directory dot dot. That takes you to the upper directory. And now what directories do we have? Express demo, no demo. So we're gonna change to express demo. Now, once we're here, we're in the correct subdirectory. We do npm I express because we want to download Express. We download it, and now we have the nodes modules or package JSON with the version of Express. And now we want to be able to create our server. So what we do is we're going to import Express from Express. We're going to import path from path. Path is a module that is already included within Node. But Express, we actually have to, download it into every project we do with npm. Now, we need our app, and we're gonna set it Express like this. We're gonna initialize the app. Um, we're gonna set a port. Let's say port 3000. Then we're gonna make our app use something called express.static into public. And that is basically gonna serve the static content that is within our public directory. And in this public directory, we're gonna have index.html. And as you guys see here, we have a small HTML application that is basically, we'll see in a second. Um, so we go back into our server. Um, we're gonna do app.get. So for if we receive a get request into the following path, let's name it, I don't know, API hello. Um, we're gonna do the following. We're gonna take a request and a response. We're gonna, so this is the callback function. And what we're gonna do is with the response, we're gonna send a response. Just gonna have the JSON form of a message that is going to say hello from our Express server. And then yeah, we do this. Now right now, since we are not, we don't really require the user to, any information from the user. We're not really using the request object. But in case you need to do certain, operations based on what the user sends you, then you would actually like use that object. Again, like for example, when you log in into Instagram, TikTok, from that request, the TikTok servers would process your username and your password and see if they match in order to be able to send you back your content or not send back anything, or not exactly not send back anything. If the credentials do not match, TikTok would set a response saying like your credentials did not match. Um, so we set up our API endpoint, and then what we do is we make our app listen at the given port, which is going to be port 3000, and we're going to add a callback function that is basically going to be simply a small action that tells us whether our page ran or not. Let's our server started running or not. Let's say server running. It's simply like this callback function simply runs once the app successfully starts listening into the port. Sometimes you can handle some errors or stuff like that, or set up some things when you set up the server for the first time, but in this case, we'll just say server running. And now, as you see here, um, we have a button and we have something called output, like a what is it called? Like a paragraph with an ID output. Right now, it's just going to say waiting. And we're going to have a small script that basically adds an event listener into our button. And whenever someone clicks, what it does is it fetches an API call request into API hello, which is the endpoint that we set up here. And then we await for the response, the data, and we make it a JSON file. And then within the document, we get the element ID output, which is going to be the one here in the paragraph, and we set up the text to the response that we got from the server. So what we're going to have to do is, let me open my Google Chrome, and then what we do is, I don't know, let me open this one. And then we're gonna do local host 3000, and this site cannot be reached. Oh, it's because I'm not. This type of errors always happen whenever you're coding. That the reason why it didn't run is because I'm not running my server, so I have to run node server.mjs server running. This is good. That means it started listening. We do again local host 3000, 3000, and because of this, our content is going to be served our static file, which is going to be here index.html. It's in the subdirectory called public, which we state here. Um, and now what we do is we call the backend and we get our response from our backend saying hello from our Express server. We can also, I don't know, if you want, we can do also console.log. Hello. And then excuse me, we run it again. Server running. Here it is, server running, and we call backend. Um, where's the hello? Oh, I see. Never mind. Never mind. It's not there. Wait, it might have been here. It might be here. Hello. The hello is here. Um, I was intending to, whenever you see a response, to see it on the server, something like here. So console log. Um, we again restored. We run again, and then we call backend, and it says hello here. So, anyways, this was a small demo for Node.js, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know in at